It was subtle, just a faint shift in rhythm, but I felt it. The old place had a way of settling into quiet after 10, the refrigerator humming low, the floorboards cooling, the clock in the hallway ticking steady like a patient heartbeat. That night, there was another sound layered on top of it all, a soft, uneven pacing from the guest room, the whisper of bare feet crossing carpet, stopping, turning back. I stared at the ceiling and told myself it was grief. Divorce has a way of shaking a person loose from their sleep. I knew that. I believed that. I didn't know yet that the sound I was hearing wasn't grief at all. It was calculation. She arrived just before sunset, my sister Lydia, with 2 suitcases and a plastic storage bin taped shut at the corners. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, the way she used to wear it when she wanted to look composed but didn't quite feel it. Her eyes were red, not crying red, but tired red, the kind that comes from rehearsing a story over and over until it loses its edges. I hugged her at the door, felt her ribs through her sweater. She smelled faintly of stale coffee and dryer sheets. "I won't be long," she said into my shoulder, "just until I get back on my feet." "Take your time," I told her, and meant it. Blood is blood. That's how we were raised. I helped her drag the suitcases down the hall. The wheels scraped against the hardwood, leaving a thin, white line like chalk. I remember thinking I'd clean it later. I always thought there'd be time later. My husband Mark came out of the living room to greet her, warm and gentle like he always was. He took one suitcase without being asked. "You're safe here," he said. Lydia smiled at him, quick, practiced. "Thank you." That smile stayed with me longer than it should have. Before Lydia came, our life was quiet in the best way, predictable, earned. Mark and I had been married 12 years, not the flashy kind of love people post online, but the steady kind that shows up when the dishwasher breaks or one of you gets sick at the wrong time. We ate dinner together most nights, even if it was just soup and toast. On Sundays, Mark watered the garden while I folded laundry at the kitchen table, the smell of clean cotton and dirt drifting in through the open window. We didn't have children, something we'd grieved and made peace with in our own time. Our home was small, but intentional. Every picture frame had a story, every chair had been chosen slowly. Lydia's divorce had been sudden, at least from my vantage point. One phone call late on a Tuesday, her voice thin and brittle. "He left," she said. "He just left." I gripped the edge of the counter, the cool laminate pressing into my palm. "What do you mean left?" "He said he couldn't do it anymore." At the time, that was enough. Marriages end, people grow tired. I didn't ask more than she was ready to give. When she moved in, she told the same version of the story to everyone, to her mother on speakerphone, to my aunt in a long, quiet call, to Mark over coffee the next morning. "He changed," she said, "got distant, accused me of things that didn't make sense. I tried, but you can't save someone who wants out." She said it softly, eyes down, stirring her mug long after the sugar had dissolved. The spoon clicked against ceramic, steady, nervous. I nodded. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my younger sister. I braided her hair before school, covered for her when she snuck out, held her hand at our father's funeral. There's a trust that gets baked into you that deep, it doesn't crumble easily. The first few weeks were fine. Better than fine, actually. Lydia cooked dinner sometimes, oversalted but heartfelt. She helped me reorganize the pantry, lining up cans with a precision I didn't have the patience for. She laughed more than I expected, especially with Mark. Not flirtatious exactly, just animated, present. Still, there were small things, tiny, almost invisible. She'd ask Mark questions that felt a little too personal, about his work stress, about whether he ever felt trapped by routine. She said it casually, like curiosity, but her eyes lingered when he answered. Once I walked into the living room and found them mid-conversation, their voices dropping when they saw me. "Oh," Lydia said quickly. "We were just talking about paint colors." Mark nodded. "Yeah, for the guest room." I smiled and let it go. Sisters and husbands talk. That's normal. But later that night, as I rinsed dishes, I noticed Lydia standing in the doorway watching us. Mark's hand rested on my back while he passed me a towel. Lydia's gaze flickered there, then away. It was nothing, I told myself. I was tired, protective, overthinking. The first real clue came in the form of a phone call I wasn't meant to hear. I was folding laundry upstairs when Lydia's voice floated up through the vent, sharp, low, urgent. "No, that's not what I said," she snapped. "You're twisting it." I paused, a warm towel half folded in my hands. "I didn't ruin anything," she continued. "You walked away. That's on you." There was silence on the other end, then a laugh from Lydia that made my stomach tighten. It wasn't amused, it was defensive. "I'm not doing this again," she said. "I've moved on." The line went dead. When I came downstairs, Lydia was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. "Everything okay?" I asked lightly. She looked up, startled, then smiled. "Yeah, just my ex. He can't let go." I nodded. Something about the way she said ex, like a dismissal, caught on a corner of my mind and refused to smooth out. That night, the pacing returned, back and forth in the guest room, stop, turn, back again. I lay awake and stared at the dark, listening, feeling a quiet, unfamiliar tension begin to stretch across the house. I didn't know yet what it was pulling toward. The next morning, I noticed my journal was missing from my nightstand. I found it later that day on the guest room desk, placed neatly beside Lydia's laptop. She said it must have been a mistake. She apologized quickly, eyes wide, hands fluttering. "I thought it was mine," she said. "I'm so sorry." I told her it was fine. I believed her. But when I picked it up, I saw the ribbon marker was tucked into a page I hadn't left it on. That was when the air in my chest shifted. Just a little. Enough to notice. Enough to remember. Enough to make me wonder for the first time if my sister wasn't running from anything at all, but bringing it with her. I didn't confront her about the journal. Not then. I told myself there were harmless explanations. Maybe she really had picked it up by accident. Maybe she'd set it down without realizing what page it was open to. I slid it back onto my nightstand that evening, smoothing the cover with my palm like I was tucking a thought back into place. Still, I didn't write in it for days. Something had shifted inside me. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet tightening, the kind that makes you notice where your keys are, the kind that listens more than it speaks. Life went on, but with a faint static under everything. Lydia settled into a routine. She woke up early before Mark and I, padding into the kitchen in socks that whispered against the floor. She started jogging in the mornings, returning flushed and breathless, stretching in the living room while Mark drank his coffee. She'd laugh at his jokes a beat longer than necessary. She'd sit closer than she needed to on the couch, tucking her legs under herself like she belonged there. I noticed. I said nothing. Mark, bless him, remained exactly who he'd always been. Kind, a little oblivious, trusting. If he felt the shift, he didn't name it. Or maybe he did and chose not to add weight to it. One evening while I chopped onions for dinner, Lydia leaned against the counter watching me. "You're lucky," she said. The knife paused mid-slice. "Lucky?" She nodded towards the living room where Mark was adjusting the thermostat. "You found someone steady. Not everyone gets that." Her tone wasn't bitter, it was thoughtful. Too thoughtful. "Marriage is work," I said, returning to the onions. My eyes burned, but not from the sting. She smiled faintly. "Sometimes work gets boring." I looked up at her then, really looked her. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. The next clue came wrapped in concern. I came home from work one afternoon to find Lydia sitting at the kitchen table with Mark. Papers were spread between them, our utility bills, the mortgage statement, a few envelopes I recognized as mine. "What's all this?" I asked, keeping my voice light. Mark glanced up. "Oh, Lydia was just helping me understand the budget better. She noticed some expenses were higher than average." I felt something dip in my stomach. I usually handle the bills. Lydia looked up quickly. "I didn't mean to overstep. I was just, helping." Helping. She said it the way people do when they want credit without blame. "It's fine," I said, gathering the papers. My hands felt steadier than I expected. "Next time, just ask." She nodded, eyes down. "Of course." That night, I asked Mark about it gently. "He seemed worried about you," he said. "About stress. Said you've been carrying a lot." I laughed softly. "Did he?" He shrugged. I didn't think much of it. I did, because I hadn't told Lydia anything about my stress, about the tension at work, about the nights I lay awake thinking about aging parents and money and time. Those thoughts lived in my journal, in my quiet, in places I hadn't invited her into. Or so I thought. A week later, I ran into Paul, Lydia's ex-husband, at the grocery store. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight, his shoulders slumped forward like he was bracing against weather no one else could see. When our eyes met in the produce aisle, he froze. "Oh," he said. "Hi." "Paul," I replied, surprised by how tight my voice sounded. "I didn't know you were still in town." He gave a humorless smile. "For now." We stood there awkwardly, apples between us like neutral ground. "She told me you moved in with her," he said carefully. I nodded. "She's staying with me for a bit." He hesitated. "I hope she's okay." Something in his tone caught me. Not anger, not resentment. Relief. "She said you left," I said, watching his face. He looked down at his cart. "That's one way to tell it." He waited.